Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I am your host, Ricky Cavalier. Our next guest is one of the funniest comedians around, and he makes people laugh across all borders, whether it's his Netflix special, Losing It, or on ABC's Whiskey Cavalier. Veer Das knows how to bring the jokes. Let's take a look.
Every time a woman in India wears something revealing, like many of you are doing tonight, Indian men say shit like, oh, she's asking for it. Am I wrong, ladies? Have you heard that in your lives, yeah? Our politicians have said that shit on the news. She was asking for it, which is bullshit. The infinite beauty and fun of being a woman is if she's asking for it, she can just ask for it. Because it is available, I promise you. She can just think of it, and 28s will line up outside her door. For the woman, the world is Amazon.it. You can ask for it, compare it, size of it, delivery date of it, prime it, non-prime it, cash on delivery, whatever you like. That's the beauty of being a woman. It's so specific. You get to ask for it. It. Men, we just want to get some.
Everybody, please welcome Veer Das. Hey. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Congratulations on the special.
Thank you.
This is your second Netflix special?
My second
Your
Netflix special, yeah.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank
it's
you.
amazing. And Whiskey Cavalier, it's a big
you.
time for you.
It is an interesting time, yes.
Interesting time. It doesn't feel, is it the kind of thing where to everybody else, they say, oh, this is a big, an amazing time for you. And you're like, it's weird, it's interesting, I don't know, I'm trying to figure it out.
No, I have like 5 friends and they're all pretty mean. So it's, no, it's...
Go on, you think you're a big shot now, don't you? That kind of thing?
I think if you think about it in terms of, you know, everything that's happening, it can be a fair amount of daunting, but I tend not to. I've kind of gotten by micromanaging my mindset, where, you know, life is very much about this joke or this room or this group of people, and there's nothing outside what's happening right now.
What am I doing today?
What am I doing today? What am I doing right now? What's for lunch? That's my most important question. Is what's for lunch?
That's really, me too.
That's
I've
all I
missed
care
lunch
about.
so far, and I'm really looking forward to my moment with a meal right now.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I'm curious how you have an interesting background in terms of where you're born and where you grew up. How did you come to stand-up comedy?
Vodka. Just vodka and rejection. No, I was in like this very serious drama program. I went to college in the US. So I went to college in Galesburg, Illinois, the mecca of civilization as we know it. And it was this very American drama school program where you sat in a circle and you cried all the time, and you discussed your feelings, and you learned how to emote with your shoulders, and, you know, it was 4 years of...
Did you have to do a lot of sort of like classic American scenes?
Yeah.
Can I ask, what was that like as an Indian man, having to do these classic, like probably having to do like The Price by Arthur Miller or something like that?
I did Death of a Salesman. I did like This Is the Real Speaking, which is like an Ozark set thing. So, you know, you learn the accent and it's fun. But then after 4 years of doing that, I kind of felt like I needed something a little more organic. I was a gigantic like Richard Pryor fan, Eddie Murphy, George Carlin. So you have like a thesis performance in your 4th year. I wrote a show, forgive me, called Brown Men Can't Hump. Just because there was a movie around the time called White Men Can't Jump. Brown men can hump. There's 1.3 billion of us, so someone is. But it was, you know, 90 minutes of just me performing for my friends. And that's the first time I did stand-up. And
You did a one-man, would you consider that stand-up, or was it more of a one-man show because you were coming from a sort of theatrical background?
I'd consider it an attempt at stand-up. You know, it was 5 minutes of jokes and maybe 80 minutes of inside stories. But then you know, cut to, I was in Chicago and I was kind of waiting tables and doing that whole thing and getting up at open mics, and that's what kind of started it. But I found stand-up in America.
So after that Brown Men Can't Hump, you started hitting open mics, or you had started hitting open mics prior to Brown?
No, I'd never done an open mic. So it's kind of strange because the first time you do stand-up, it's usually 5 minutes for 20 people. I ended up doing 90 minutes for 800 people the first time I did stand-up. And that's almost doing yourself a disservice because you go out thinking every crowd is going to be like your college friends.
Right.
Cut to it's Tuesday night and it's 2 o'clock in the morning in Chicago and you're bombing and you don't know why.
Well, I would imagine that you had, maybe you weren't workshopping this material in comedy clubs, but you were, I mean, it was your thesis, so you were workshopping it consistently with your class, and you knew what was funny in the same way that, you know, performing it material you would find what's funny.
I just like the organic nature of stand-up. I've always been comfortable on a stage since I was 5 years old. And so the ability to take a left and take a right as your mind allows you to, which theater doesn't afford you as such. That's what I enjoy most. And I think that's what I liked the first time I did stand-up as well.
You don't get to play off the audience as much when you're
not so much.
performing a, you know.
Yeah, you can't take a right in Shakespeare and just be like, to be or not to be, who cares? You know, and move on.
The salesman is constantly going left.
I mean,
you
the
can't
salesman
really
has
move.
to die.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it'd be a different play.
Spoiler alert for those of you
Yeah.
who don't know the classic play.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what was it like when you told your parents that you wanted to be a stand-up?
I didn't. They don't
Or an
know.
actor.
No.
Maybe go back to just telling them that you wanted to be an actor.
I came to the US to study economics. And then 2 years in, my first semester in, I did a beginning acting class. It kind of changed my life. I didn't tell my parents for 2 years. So I just kind of called them up after 2 years and I'm like, hey, just sit down. Remember all that money you spent? I'm a drama major now. And my dad was like, that's great. No, you're not. You're an economics major. So then I had to do a double major in drama and economics to get through it. So yeah.
Wow.
But I made good on my promise to my dad.
Do you still hold a lot of your economics knowledge?
No, I'm broke. So no. I wish I was joking. I'm not. Anyway.
And so your first Netflix special was how long ago?
It was 2 years ago.
2 years ago?
And then this one just came out.
Was that the culmination of how many years of material?
I think about a year. I tend to write a new, 60-minute show every year. And I only started coming out to the US three and a half years ago. And Netflix saw me at the Improv in Hollywood and they were like, we want you to do a special. So it kind of just came from that.
So you started doing stand-up in the US and then you went back to...
I went back to India. I was doing Bollywood movies for a good 8 or 9 years and dipping into stand-up. But about 4 years ago, I just kind of sat back and said, I need to really work at stand-up and try and be good at this. And, if you want to get good at a sport, you play that sport with people who are better than you are. So I came down to America and started going to the UK a lot because here's where the people that I idolize work. So I want to put myself on the same stage with everybody and see if I can match up.
What is it like doing a joke or, a bit like we just saw in that clip, right? Where you're talking about misogyny, basically, in India. Do you do that at an Indian comedy club?
I think so. I mean, the clip's about misogyny in general, but I find that Indians are a wonderful comedy crowd in that we haven't seen so much comedy that we're jaded by it. There's an inherent optimism and humility in the crowd where they're genuinely happy to hear you talking about risky things. I like to think of it as tougher foreplay, better sex. So the first 3 minutes of a show in India are very tough. You got to, yank the laughter out of them, but then they'll give you a better response than anywhere else in the world.
How do you yank the laughter out of them in those first 3 minutes?
I think full disclosure is always better for a comedy crowd, where if you just come out and say, listen, here's who I am, and here's how you feel and how I feel, and these tickets were overpriced, and I'm sorry. Some of my stuff is good and some of my stuff isn't good. If you're just kind of honest and endear yourself to a crowd, I think they'll always be on your side, even for the bad jokes.
Do you find that obviously, I don't want to generalize what an Indian comedy crowd is like. I'm sure it's different. It's a massive country. I'm sure it's different all over the place. Yeah. But do you find that material about religion, about misogyny, works in the same way as it does in the States? I think States audiences are always looking for breaking taboos and finding out sort of different ways to talk about things that we consider taboo.
I think so. I think India has definitely warmed up to the fact that the beauty of comedy is that we can fundamentally disagree about something, but both laugh at it under the same roof. When it comes to India, there's way more religions and way more gods. So the world is your oyster in terms of that. Initially, I feel like 5 years ago, there was a little more discomfort when it came to religious material specifically. Political material has always been fine. But I think now we're okay. I really do.
Yeah. Because I would say about 20 years ago, even when Richard Pryor was coming up, there was a in the 80s at least, a very conservative side to comedy or viewing comedy. It was easier to shatter taboos in America, and now it's like it's a little bit different.
I think, the pendulum swings either way, where sometimes I don't think comedians swing a certain way, but what people are looking for from their comedians changes sort of every 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
And I feel like the 80s was maybe a period where people were just like, man, life is tough. I just want to be entertained. And I don't want to think about how tough life is. And that's why I'm coming out to a comedy show. When now in a time where people expect comedians to be relevant and political and almost speak to truth and speak truth to power in a certain sense. And that'll possibly change again in 5 years.
Do you like that more or less than just being silly or writing jokes about your personal life and dating? Or
I don't know, man. Like I'm not.
You're not trying to be relevant.
I'm
it is what it is.
Trying to find my voice. Chappelle is 30 years into this game, and is the best he's ever been because he's 30 years in. I'm 9 years in, so I don't know what kind of comedian I'm going to be. 2 years from now, it's going to change. The special Losing It is reasonably political, and it's about a moment in your life where you wake up at age 35, which I did, and just kind of go, you know what? 80% of this shit has to go. I don't like 80% of these people. I don't believe 80% of what I used to believe. And I don't know who I am. And that's kind of exhilarating to start your life afresh at age 35. And that's what the show is about. The new show I'm touring America with now is about love. The whole show is 90 minutes about love. And I don't know where that came from, but you just kind of have to ride with it.
Where were you at 35 when you started realizing that 80% of that shit had to go? And when we talk about 80% of that shit, we're talking about beliefs, behavior,
purchases, material things, people in your circle, people around you, everything. I kind of had to shake my world up a little bit.
How did that feel?
It's great.
Was it scary at first?
Yeah, caught a flight to America. That's literally what happened. I was very secure in Bombay, and then caught a flight to America and went and did 5 minutes at the Laugh Factory in Hollywood, and that kind of led to this journey. So,
how did you do your first time back in America doing stand-up?
It was fine.
Really?
I'd been doing it about 7 years before I got back to America. So a lot of people were like, "Who's this tiny brown man cracking jokes?" But it worked out.
But you knew how to work a crowd. You knew how to figure out what was going on. Did you feel like, had you already started tailoring your jokes a little bit for an American audience?
I don't think you have to anymore. That's
really?
the beautiful thing about an American crowd right now is, that shtick of Americans don't know what's happening in the rest of the world. I don't think that's valid anymore. Americans know what's happening in the rest of the world. They're a very aware and self-aware people. The first Netflix special was reasonably introductory. And it was me talking about gun control or me talking about cereal. But
cereal?
Yeah, but I find it fascinating that in America you have an aisle for cereal.
Yeah.
Like you complain about your president, you have an aisle for cereal. How bad could life be?
Grocery stores in every other country are fascinating compared to. I mean, America's grocery stores, I guess, are the fascinating ones. But
yeah, but do you need 700 kinds of cereal?
No, of course not. Every time I go to a grocery store in another country, and it's just like toothpaste, and it's like 2 brands: toothpaste one, toothpaste 2, cereal 1, cereal 2. I'm like, that's okay. That's all that we need.
Yeah, you just need like the tiger and the captain, surely. That's all you need.
That is it.
You
need the sugar one and the healthy one, and then you can move on.
That's it. You don't need, that much. So, but I think now with the next special, it got a really good American response because ironically I told an authentically Indian story. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of talked about myself and my family, and Americans took to that far more than the first one.
Well, they say that I mean, at least in entertainment, quite often, like once you become your authentic self, that's when you become the most interesting to audiences,
Man,
whether
that
it's on a
sounds
big
like
level
some
or even a small
Deepak
level.
Chopra stuff. I don't know, man. Like it's once you
You're not
find
a-
your authentic self, you
You're
will
not
be.
a Deepak fan?
I'm not an authentic self fan. I don't
Fair
know
enough,
who I
fair
am. Do you
enough.
know who you are? Who
No,
here
God,
knows
no.
who they are? We're figuring that stuff out.
Yeah, I don't think I hope that I never really figure it out, because once you figure it out, you're kind of dead. You've
Right.
stopped.
Contentment is the enemy. You always have to be striving for something, I think. Or some struggle has to be happening.
So how did you come across the new material where you're just talking about love?
You spend a fair amount of your life on the road. And when you get home, like, I have a beautiful woman that I'm married to for 3 years now, and we have an English bulldog and a wonderful house, and I don't get to be there enough. So when you travel for 6 months a year, for the remaining 6 months, you're trying to squeeze as much love as you can. As a comedian, if you're gigging on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, on Monday through Thursday, you're trying to squeeze as much love as you can, like a week's love into 4 days. And that was fascinating to me. The concept of checking in and out of being able to love to another human being. So how much do you love your country, your pet, your parents, your spouse, your family, your material possessions? That's kind of what I'm talking about these days.
But you're gigging on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but then you're also shooting during the week now as
I am
well,
shooting,
right?
yes, yeah.
What's your schedule like on Whiskey Cavalier?
It is, so we shot in Prague. It's this wonderful cast and producers. We all, Scott Foley, Lauren, Anna Ortiz, Tyler James Williams, everybody moved to Prague for 5.5 months. So we all just had this giant European adventure.
Did you bring your wife and the English bulldog?
We
as
went
well?
back and forth. Back and forth. Prague's a little bit closer to India than it is to America. So
Right.
one was able to go back and forth. It's great. I love this show. I'm able to murder people.
Did you ever think that you could be an action star, that you would be doing fight scenes?
I've done fight scenes in Bollywood before,
Yeah?
but on American TV, Indians, we tend to play these lovable people who are very sorted. And the immigrants who always just have their shit together and show up and do your taxes and fix your computer and leave.
You're the brain doctor, or you're like, I'm hacking into the mainframe.
Right.
Like, that's
But
pretty much it.
But we are people who are passionate and who are flawed and who are insecure, and it was nice to play that. So my character, Jada, is a weapons expert and just a guy who's been out in the field blowing things up and killing people for a very long time, and is now thrown into this office environment where he has to deal with conversation and romance and friendship. And to him, guns are simple, people are complicated. And it's fascinating to play that as an Indian character.
How did you get involved with the show? Did you audition for it?
I did like a general reading for Bill Lawrence and Dave Hemmingson, and they were shooting the pilot in a week. And I just happened to be in LA, and we had met once before, and they're like, hey, come and read some stuff. And I did, and I was driving back from the studio, and they just made a call saying, we want you in this show. Wow. So we're going to write a role for you in this show. So they put 2 scenes into the pilot, and then they were like, then we're going to sit down and work on this character together. And they came through in the biggest, wonderful way.
That's so cool. So they worked on the character with you after that first episode?
I mean, they worked on it because these are people who know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Bill is a comedy legend. Peter's amazing as well. So is Dave. But they legitimately designed a character and put him into the show so that I could be in the show.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was a good afternoon, to just kind of meet these guys at 4 p.m. and then at 4:45 they were like, we're going to do all of this.
They called you so you read at 4 and then
my agents called at like 4:45 and they're like, they want to get on the phone with you and they're going to make something happen. And it was just the luck of the Irish. It was a wonderful break.
That's incredible.
I was just touring the US. I was just here doing stand-up and taking meetings. And they were like, we shoot in Prague in a week. So I had to cancel 6 weeks of stand-up. And in a week, I was just in Prague shooting with, Scott and Lauren and these big American TV stars. And it was just kind of, it was surreal how it happened.
So you said it was about 3 years ago, right? You got up and left India, basically. And
I started coming out here 3 years.
Started coming out a little bit more.
Yeah.
What was that experience like, booking new gigs? Obviously, you did the first one at the Improv, you said?
Yeah.
What was it like after that, like trying to book different places and Did it feel different trying to figure out an American audience, or did you feel like you got your footing pretty quickly?
I think American audiences, you can experiment with them a lot because they've seen such great stand-up for such a long time. The booking process, I had an agency, so that was kind of a good start.
Right.
You know, a lot of times we'd book like just a regular American comedy club, and then on the day, 300 brown people would show up, and they'd be like, "We've never seen this happen in this club before," which is great. So, but now for the first time, it's interesting because the crowds are 50% American and 50% Indian, and I've never had that before.
Did you have any experiences where, and I know this sounds like where you bombed, but not necessarily that, but where you showed up and it was really an audience that just like was not going to warm up to your material, like they're
Just at home, no. I think, no, I mean, you've been doing this long enough. You know that if they're not going with it, you have to kind of cook live and throw some ingredients in there. I've been doing shows like, I remember one time I toured America and I'm like, just send me where there aren't any Indian people. And let's see what happens. And my agency got back saying there's nowhere where there aren't any Indian people. You guys are everywhere. So I'm like, fine, send me where there's the least amount of Indian people. So I went to like Charlotte, North Carolina. I went to Denver. And it was kind of nice to do, a room full of, right-wing, older white people and have that gig go well and have to work that out with them. It was wonderful.
I mean, it's a testament to how interested, no matter what your personal perspective is, how interested humans are in the genuine story of another human being.
I think
right?
so. Also, I do this thing where I sleep with the audience before the show.
You put out.
Yeah, and it just really helps the show. I find it doesn't matter where you're from. Once we're done sleeping together,
so you cruise into a city. What about
about a week in advance.
Yeah, a week in advance. You can pack
I get their home addresses. And
10 a day, 20 a day. Then you see what you can get through to at least get a large number of people laughing for
Absolutely.
you. And they'll get the rest of them going.
I mean, they're laughing while I'm sleeping with them. I don't know why, but
That's a lot of pain to go through in a week, man. I think we have a couple questions in the audience. Right here, hi.
Hi.
Do you think the world tour changed you somehow as an actor? And if so, how exactly? And what was the most valuable thing you learned during the tour?
I think the most valuable thing that I learned in a weird way is to find your true self. Because on the world authentic self. I'm sorry. On the world tour, I did Stavanger in Norway, or I did gigs in Africa, or I went to I think close to 33 countries, and the cultures are so unbelievably different. Really, all you have to rely on is your own story. So you really try and better your story and to find a more emotional connect to your story, so that if I'm telling you something about New Delhi, or I'm telling you something about the north of India, what's resonating between us is more that feeling rather than that situation or that place. And I think finding that emotional connect helps you as an actor as well. So yeah.
One more question. Right here.
Hi.
Hello.
Do you prefer doing stand-ups or working on TV shows?
Whatever has more cash. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. I'm not joking. No, I think, there are different sides of your brain. Stand-up is very solo. Acting is very collaborative. You have a lot of people to help you in acting. In stand-up, you're kind of out there by yourself. Stand-up, you say 600 things in 1 hour. Acting, you try and say one thing 600 different ways. And actors are very pampered. So I couldn't be an actor 12 months a year and talk about protein shakes and, and about my new workout for 12 months and sit in a trailer. And at the same time, I couldn't be on the road in airports and hotels eating fried food 12 months a year either. So it's nice to be on a set for 3 months and get pampered and then go and rough it on the road. Keeps you grounded.
Do you write a lot of your material before going on stage, or do you go on stage and test out ideas and then come back and start writing it?
I think I'm at a point now where I have to do a fair amount of writing before, because you are responsible for people's weekend. They've chosen you that weekend.
Now they've come out to see you.
Come out
you
to
can't
see
really
you.
just sort of
They've
waste
got
time.
a babysitter. They've spent a lot of money. They need an experience. So you have to be better prepared for it. Yeah.
Well, I love your work, man. I'm so glad to have you on here. Losing It is on Netflix now, and Whiskey Cavalier is on ABC. Everybody give a huge round of applause for Verdas. Let's hear it.